Welcome to the next episode of the Iowa Girls Wrestling Podcast. Today, I'm going to have a very fun podcast. I'm joined by two guests today, Emily Hartzell Rogers and Josh Worthen, better known as Hannah's mom and Jillian's dad. How are you guys doing today?
Awesome.
I'm doing well. I'm doing
Yeah,
well. Thanks for having us,
I
Troy.
Oh yeah, no, I've known you both for a few years, and I thought this would be kind of fun, um, just because I don't think you'll hold back and you'll help some parents out that are getting into the same situations you've been into, and I think we're just gonna have a fun conversation. So we'll start with Hannah's mom. What gives you a qualifications to be a wrestling mom and um, an expert today?
Well, I was an all-state basketball player, an all-state softball player, and D1 college softball player, so I was completely unqualified to be a wrestling mom. However, my children made different decisions for me. So I was able to learn from some veterans as the kids grew up, and as girls wrestling took off, I had an adventurous daughter who said, "If I don't try it, I'll never know." She actually started as her brother's practice partner in school club, and that was because they were the same size. She went on to be a three-time state medalist and is now a, a full-time referee, and will be embarking on that adventure now moving forward. So that's how I became a wrestling mom.
Nice. And Mr. Worthen, how did you become a wrestling dad?
Um, I was that parent that waited for the kid to bring the permission slip home when they were little. I was just chomping at the bit, hoping they would pick it up. So I wrestled a little bit in high school. I fell in love with it. I had hoped one day my kids would too. And so each and every one just kind of followed suit, starting with Jacob and then Hunter and then Jillian eventually later.
Yeah. No, they're awesome kids. I've been on trips with Jillian. I've, watched her grow into such an awesome wrestler, and the cool thing is with Jillian, she always gives back because she's always working with the young kids. And she just recently, coached on a trip down to Florida, which was really cool. I hope she enjoyed that end of it. I didn't get to talk to her a whole lot, but I did talk to her for a little while. And then Hannah, I met you first at the Lloyd's wedding and stuff, and then I watched Hannah. I've watched her beat my wrestlers, and now I've got to have some really nice conversations with her officiating, and I know that's she's in a great spot. I've talked to Mark Kenny, and I believe that if she wants to, she probably would have a spot down in Florida next year if she wants to try to qualify for that.
Yep.
I thought we would start by talking about youth wrestling, and both your daughters. How old was Hannah when she started?
So Hannah started in the room with her brother, like I said, as his practice partner, when she was in fifth and sixth grade. And more so sixth grade, she was going to practices because he was out of partners his size and age for the practice timing. And by seventh grade, she just said, "Well, I might as well compete because they have some girls' divisions. So let's buy me a singlet and I'll just go give it a shot." So she started club only in seventh grade and then did junior high season as an eighth grader.
Okay.
And she did AAU as a seventh grader and then as an eighth grader again, and then full blown into high school.
And then when did Jillian start? She's been around forever, it seems like.
Yeah, did a little bit of wrestling when she was like 4 or 5 years old, 6 years old. Didn't do it real long. There wasn't a lot of girls, and she got to a point at a very young age where it was, Dad, I don't want to do this. I don't want to get beat up by the boys. And so she had actually switched to swimming, and she did very well at swimming for several years, and then eventually kind of made her way back about fifth, sixth grade shortly after one of Jason's tournaments, and she got to watch some girls compete, and she was like, I want to try again, Dad. So, but yeah, probably about fifth, sixth grade, she really started getting into it again.
Yeah, no, she's done well. Actually, both of them did very well, and but didn't start super early. I'm seeing a lot of early starters now, which is great. It's really cool to see, you know, hundreds of girls in the third and fourth grade and fifth and sixth grade. When, I started, there was, I think, 22 girls total in the high school, and most of them were taking forfeits at 100 or 105 or 103, whatever the weight class was at the time. But with that, those numbers and expectations and AAU states and Pee Wee states, parents' expectations is there some advice you could give to some youth parents about maybe the expectations of your kids as a youth athlete versus a high school, possibly college athlete? And we'll start ladies first.
This is probably a very unpopular statement, but my number one advice is do less of more things. So what I mean by that is keep it seasonal until they are at puberty. I truly feel, and this is for all sports, keep it seasonal. You are not going to lose anything as a 10-year-old because you are not wrestling year round. You are not going to lose any physical skill or mental acuity in baseball because you are not throwing a baseball year round or softball or volleyball or whatever. Do less of more things. And in my family's instance, that worked out. Hannah played basketball. Hannah was a very talented shooter, and she had a little bit of her mom's hustle and aggression. Um, fifth and sixth grade basketball were a blast, and it was a very short season. We did a little bit, and that she was helping her brother in the wrestling room. She was keeping it seasonal. She was keeping it, segmented. Um, like I said, in eighth grade, she said, "Okay, well, if I don't go try junior high wrestling, I won't ever know. I might as well go try it. I can always go back and play basketball." She was not wrong at all. She absolutely found her home on the mat, and which explained why she and her youth softball coach, butted heads. Mike Koss, who is now our head boys wrestling coach in Wilton, he's like, I was coaching her like a softball player. If I coached her like a wrestler, I might have reached her a little different. But point being, no child should be expected to know what they want to do in life at 12. Let them do a little bit of everything. Let them expand, let them explore, let them find a passion, let the passion find them. I truly feel the associations could do a better job of maintaining seasons. And that's not going to happen unless parents start to maintain seasons. So, probably a widely unpopular choice of words. And I'm sorry to all the club coaches that I just said that out loud. My kids are out of your program. It's just my opinion. So,
No, and actually you're, from a lot of, you know, studying and research and things like that. I kind of actually do that with my high school girls. I don't push a lot of off-season stuff. If they want to do it, I'll find it. But you got to develop and you got to have some breaks between to do something different. And burnout is real.
oh my
I,
gosh.
I know it's real. And then also, I think we're seeing more injuries, just repetitive injuries. They're doing the same thing, throwing all the time, or just different things. I feel now in my 50s, I can't take a shot anymore because I've probably taken thousands and thousands of shots over the years, and my knees just don't work. So yeah, and
Yep.
if we're starting earlier and doing more, they're just going to
Yep.
happen earlier.
And I'd
Mr.
say,
Worthen.
I'm not saying
Oh,
don't be
oh,
physically active,
yeah.
and so if it is like if wrestling is the only thing that you are that I couldn't hit a volleyball to save my life. So volleyball wasn't my thing. But if that's the only thing you're going to do, you don't have to compete year round. That's the mental burnout. That's the mental break. That's the thing that is also incredibly important. My son is looking to play college football, would not say no to college wrestling, but is looking to play college football. He still goes to wrestling workouts. The physical activity, the physical work, but the competing, the weight situation, and that's one thing wrestling brings to the table from any other sport out there. The metabolic pressure you put on your body is different than any other sport. And my advice across the board, I guess, is still just do less, do more of less, do less of more things.
Yeah, no, I like that. Mr. Worthen, what's your advice for youth parents coming into this?
I do agree with a lot of what Emily had just said, especially in youth. I always try to encourage my kids to do other things. My kids always found their way back to the wrestling mat. And one of their coaches pulled me aside. And I used to limit Jillian at first when she first started wrestling because I didn't want her to quote unquote burn out. But he pulled me aside and he's like, she wants more. You have to give her more. And he told me, you have to feed the hungry. And that's always stuck with me since she was started wrestling club. And once I took the reins off of her and let her decide, she was going to practice 5 days a week, 6 days a week if she could. She wanted to be there. I'd get a text message every day, sometimes multiple days. Dad, are we going to practice tonight? So I think it's just more listen to your kid. I
Mhm.
don't think some parents listen enough to their kids. No, I don't want to go to practice tonight. That's okay. If your kid wants to go once a week, let them go once a week, especially in youth. They don't have to go 4 days a week. Some kids want to go
Yep.
4 days a week. Don't limit them if that's what they want to do. If they're passionate to go 4 days a week, they're going to improve. If they're passionate to go one day a week and hang out with their buddies, they're going to improve. So I think it just comes down to listening and just knowing your kid and not, this is what we have to do, and let them just kind of guide their way.
Yeah, I like
Yep.
that. That's good. Very good advice. I think sometimes, kids that's good listening to your kids because sometimes I think, and I've seen this on, different parents and I may have done a little bit myself with my daughters in swimming early on. Um, they liked it because I liked it. They liked it because I pushed them to do that things and they wanted to, say, "Oh, Dad's happy that I'm doing this, so that's cool." So I think sometimes that happens and we don't listen to our kids. So both great advice for youth. I'm doing some different interviews with some high school girls, little shorter ones, and I just actually had one earlier today with a young lady. I won't say their name. Only been wrestling a couple years, and already has placed at the state tournament and things like that. So um, we know as me as a coach and you as parents of daughters or high level daughters, man, there's going to be somebody that comes out of nowhere that we had no idea who that person was, and then all of a sudden they're beating their or they're beating their top kids or just and it happens more and more in the sport of girls wrestling because people are being introduced to it that weren't introduced to it just a few years ago. Do you have any stories or anything that maybe would go along with that maybe would help somebody realize that hey, I'm glad your fourth graders having a lot of success, but they're going to have to continue to work. Otherwise, there's going to be someone catches them.
Oh, Jillian, when Jillian came back to the mat, that sixth grade year, whatever it was, um, we started slow and she'd go to tournaments and she would get whipped. And then we'd go to another one and she would get whipped and thumped and beat and leave crying. And it's like, I gave her every out I could. And she's like, no, I want to go back. I want to do this. And I'll bet it was almost 2 years before she won a match. And there was a lot of girls that were really, really good when Jillian started, just whipping the living life out of her. And eventually, because of just the grittiness and the want to, she was able to run a lot of those girls down. And so just because you're having those moments, I think what happens is they're they get happy, and happy can be a bad place because then you get lackadaisical sometimes and you start overlooking, like my daughter who didn't win a match for 2 years, and all of a sudden things start clicking a little bit. um it's great when they're winning. I know it feels good. I was kind of dismissive about wins. I was not overly excited about wins, nor was I about losses either. um it was always, all right, what do we need to work on? What can we fix this week? We'd get in the car. So what are some of the good things you thought you did today? Awesome, awesome, awesome. What are some of the things you thought you didn't do so well? We need to focus on those. So I just, I watch so many kids in youth wrestling just look so stellar. And then kids that so many people would want to write off, run them down by high school.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, I was one of those kids. I didn't win a match for the first 3 years of wrestling. We didn't wrestle like they do now. I'm talking 8, 10 matches a year, not 40, 50 matches a year. But I didn't win a match for the first 3 years of my life. I still remember my first win, and the head coach, who was my head coach in high school, gave me a compliment. He probably couldn't remember that he gave me a compliment that day, but I still remember that, 40 years later. So little things like that meant a lot to me. So kids that do struggle at the beginning, I tend to, yeah, I really like to see them come around. You got anything for hedging the?
Yeah. So honestly, Hannah was kind of that kid that kind of came out of the woodwork. We knew her growth and development in the sport, and we understood where she had come from seventh grade on up. And that was actually seventh grade. She went out and beat two boys and won her very first tournament ever. And about peed my pants. I'm like, I didn't even know if she knew how to tie her wrestling shoes, and she actually went out and won two matches. She didn't win another match the rest of the year. She actually lost to Izzy Deeds in the first round of her AAU seventh grade, and it was like a 10-second pin. And I was just like,
Mhm.
yeah, that didn't go well. And she said, she's like, that girl was really good. I'm gonna go look up her videos and I'm gonna learn from that girl. Um, that was in seventh grade. By the time she got to eighth grade, she's medaling at AAU, and kind of came out of the woodwork. Um, I guess again, to kind of go back to like what to expect, when you start small, you let them build themselves. So again, defining what is youth wrestling, anything under sixth grade, that's keep it fun every other weekend through the season. Things like that make a difference. Um, but then, getting plowed over by an unknown, unless you have a brain like my son who knows every wrestler in the state, their birthday and their shoe size, you're never going to keep up with every kid. And additionally, wrestling is one of those sports that it can literally go anyway with one twist of an ankle.
Yeah.
And it can happen to anybody at any place in time. Um, One moment that did define Hannah was we went to the Morning Sun tournament, which is a Friday night tournament. We went with no school coaches or anything. It was just we wanted to squeeze one in, and they were supposed to have a girls' division, and they didn't. We got down there. Hannah went ahead and just wrestled the boys, and she was wrestling, and she was up 4-0 against a boy. Marty Hill was repping, and she she got out muscled. She didn't do anything wrong. She just physically got out strengthened, and she got pinned in the third period. And she's sobbing, and just because she was on such a high, she was doing everything right. And he raised the other kid's hand and he pulled her over and he said, "Don't you stop. You are special. Don't you stop." And she didn't really say many words until we were about halfway home. And she goes, "That ref thinks I could be okay." And so that's the other piece of the like what to expect. There are no coaches, college coaches recruiting anything in eighth grade AAU Pee Wee State. That does not happen. There
Yeah.
are no glory stories of Doug Schwab seeing somebody wrestle as a kindergartner going, "I'm going to put that kid on my team." Besides maybe his own two children.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
And they might be at Iowa.
Otherwise, yeah, but that just doesn't happen. And so you just have to remember, love to watch your kids do things. There's a poem out there called "I Love to Watch You Play," and keep it real for them as far as this is about your victory. This is about, you know, getting that double leg, getting that, doing the successful duck under, whatever. Like Josh said, what are we going to work on? What went well? Win, lose, or draw. I almost wish they didn't even give awards. I'm such a bad person, right? Like,
Mhm.
nobody cares about the trophy. Quit giving trophies. Not everybody should get a trophy. When it becomes about the size of the trophy, you've lost sight of what we're actually trying to build, which is good humans through all of this. So just keep it real for the kids and just know you're never going to predict how they're going to do and what's going to come out. And you just have to stay after it make it for them. Make it about them and their achievements, not the trophy or the win.
Yeah. One thing I've heard you both mention is the girls wrestling boys. and both of your daughters were not part of that first group of girls that had to really grind with the boys, and they actually got to wrestle in some girl stuff. But they were part of that group that really kind of made it maybe a little bit more popular and acceptable to wrestle, and part of that sanctioning and stuff. But I still hear parents say, "Man, I wish we could wrestle the boys. We'd get so much better. I wish we could just wrestle the boys." And I am so thankful that I never have to watch one of my girls get their arm tore off and have a surgery again because of wrestling some guy that's way stronger that maybe didn't know what he was doing, just was over muscling somebody. What's your thoughts on, I mean, practice? I'm all for it if there's a good practice partner and stuff, but what's your thoughts on, are you grateful for sanctioning?
Go
I
ahead,
don't care who
Josh.
starts.
Um, I was the dad that wanted my daughter to wrestle the boys. There was a very distinct difference from what I could see in girls wrestling at the time and how boys wrestled. And I honestly wanted my daughter to wrestle more like a boy than I wanted her to wrestle like a girl. So we did not seek out girls' tournaments at first. I would put her up against the boys every chance I got. But I was very mindful of it as well. We got to a certain point where it was like, okay, now the body differences are just getting to be too much. We're going to cut it off. So, as far as youth wrestling, even some middle school, I think if the girl wants to compete against the boys, I don't see it as an issue. At least, um, if they feel that's what they need to improve, and everybody feels a little bit different there. Um, there is there was just the way the boys would go after my daughter was not the same as the girls. I wanted her, wrestling is a tough sport and a rough sport. And I wanted her to feel that and acknowledge that and then utilize that on her own. I'm not saying girls aren't tough and rough. I've seen probably one of my favorite matches was Chloe and um, was
Tatum?
it Tatum?
Tatum.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I still go back. Anybody that's in wrestling needs to watch that match. That was a
yeah.
grind. So that's not what I'm saying. But at least as when she was learning and growing, I thought it was important to wrestle the boys. And we didn't, there wasn't a lot of girls. There wasn't a lot of girls
No.
practices. And when Jillian started going to Immortals, I think Lily was there every once in a while. Lily Luck, that was about it.
Hmm.
That's the only other person we've seen on occasion. So she had to wrestle boys. She had to practice with boys. She had to compete against boys. And I honestly don't know that she would have gotten to where she was if she didn't get that opportunity.
Okay. That's I see what I can definitely see what you're saying on there, because I think you're right in that, especially at the time. Um, the way some of these girls are wrestling in second and third grade now, holy crap, I'm not so sure
Different
anymore.
level now.
I mean, oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. What's your thoughts on the sanctioning and girls not wrestling the boys anymore?
Yep. So, like I said, Hannah Hannah started as her brother's practice partner because he was out of people. So we're like we kind of hit it from a different aspect, and it comes it kind of comes back to just the level of attention that we were afforded and our girls were afforded and what was available. And I think Josh and Hannah and Jillian were both very blessed with what they had around them and the network and the community. And there was some other geographies that didn't have those outlets and resources that were as welcoming or were as understanding. I relate it back to this. What is wrong with boys and girls playing coach pitch t-ball together?
Yeah, nothing.
Really? We can wear the same color t-shirt and we can run around the bases at the same time. We can all do our duck walks and our candy caning the legs, and we can all learn these things together when they're little. Um, I think boys should not be scared of girls and girls should not be scared of boys. We are all humans and we are all doing physical activities together. I'm the mom that put my son in dance, and he danced until third grade. And we won some competitions because it put him in dance. Boys should not be afraid of girls and girls should not be afraid of boys. I think that puberty mark changes everything. That fifth, sixth grade really starts to change everything. And I think kind of like in baseball and softball is a little different because the rules are different. So, the pitching
Yeah.
is different. So you hit a barrier in there. I think the same thing happens, but I I can also sit back and go, when I was in high school, our varsity girls basketball team practiced against the JV boys basketball team because they were taller, but we were better than them. So our girls team made our JV boys basketball team better because we were better basketball players than they were. Don't tell anybody I said. I'm being recorded. I just said that out loud. But you do work together. You do feed it off each other. And there's no reason the coaches can't learn from each other and strategize together. And one coach may see one flaw in a kid or one place to improve in a kid or one super strong point they're not using enough. And there's no reason for a harsh, hard, you cannot be in the same wrestling room together. You can, it's still fundamentally the same sport. You can still learn things together. It was time for sanctioning. I'm not, never in a million years would I'd say, no, it wasn't time. I mean, the sanction was the state backing it and supporting it and ensuring it and all of that. And absolutely they jumped on board. I hope they don't have any regrets because it was time for that. Um, and giving those girls the voice to move on and move up. Because the one thing people don't necessarily think about, some of the places some of these girls are coming out of the woodwork for, the karate, the jujitsu, the taekwondo, those girls are coming into this sport because it's a combat sport and they're used to the body contact. And that's giving them an outlet to physically compete in high school that they don't have. That's not just, those sports aren't sanctioned in high school. And so you've got other athletes that are able to penetrate a sport and have high school support and high school physical activity and camaraderie and teamwork. And those were all really super positive things that have come out of it. And not everybody agreed with splitting and doing two classes and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But I will go walk back to, you're not wearing hair bonnets.
Yeah.
You have to remember what our girls went through. You're not
Oh
wearing
yeah.
hair bonnets. There is no perfect growth or progression path. It's going to be different in every state, and it's going to be different for every geography within your state. Eastern Iowa, Southeast Iowa, Northeast Iowa are very, very different from Northwest Iowa or Central
Yeah.
Iowa. I believe the state association did an amazing job doing what was best for the long-term growth of the sport.
Yeah.
If I ran the world, there's a lot of things I'd be doing different. There, I'd change up the boys tournament, and all of that. So there is no perfect for everybody, but it was definitely time to sanction. And I hope that the individual school programs have done a good enough job supporting each other. Because truth be told, there's probably a few high school girls programs that are excelling above their boys programs,
Oh yeah.
um, as far as
My program's
successes
one of
and
those. Yeah.
accomplishments and all of that. So there's probably I hope those teams can continue to work together, like my high school boys and girls basketball teams together. They collaborated and learned from each other and stole plays and worked on press coverage and all those basketball things that wrestling people know nothing about.
I
I
know how
am.
to dribble a little bit.
I just wanted to add the sanctioning of girls wrestling. I mean, it's those girls so deserve to be celebrated and have that moment. These girls put in so much work. And that is work. Even if you're loving it, it's still work. Wrestling's hard sport. And you got to put in some time and you're sweating and you're bleeding. The only thing I don't like is that complete separation that's happened. I would like to see some of the practices run together, especially in the smaller communities, because there's still some schools out there that only
Yeah.
have but a handful of girls. And it's
Yep.
tough, especially like when you're Jillian, you have a lot of very new faces who are brand new to the sport.
Mhm.
And sometimes she's not getting quite what she needs, where if she could have even a few goes with some of the boys in the practice room, you know, that's the only part that I really didn't like about it was
Well,
there's
and actually,
still,
in Iowa, that is actually legal to do. There are still schools that have the same
yeah,
thing. So
but
yeah.
so many schools just automatically separated them.
Yeah.
Just, I just don't think that has to happen just yet, even though that's what some schools do. I know
I
it's not
really,
required that way.
yeah, no, and I'm with you, Josh. It's it's almost like, well, the girls can't see the boys sweat with no shirt on. Oh, for freaking frack. Like, really? Like it's you can do buddy carries and you can do your relay races there. You can do your conditioning together. I bet those girls work a little harder because they're going to keep up with the boys, and those boys are going to work a little harder just because they're not going to be shown up by some girl.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
sort, and that's what I said. Like, I hope the programs are working together, but there are schools that do absolutely treat it like boys can't see a girl with her sports bra showing off her tank top workout
Yeah.
shirt. Like, come on, you know.
Yeah.
So there, I'm with you, Josh. I hope I'm done with, I've only got a boy left in high school, so I, don't have to worry through it anymore. But I hope the schools continue to collaborate their programs and the coaching staffs work together. And my hope, I guess, is that no school has a written rule that the boys and the girls cannot be in the same wrestling room at the same time. Like,
Yeah. When I started, so when I was always an assistant coach until I came to Ridgeview, which is now will be my 5th year, or is it 6th? Somewhere in there, 5th, 6th year. And it was 5 because I just renewed my certificate again, 5 years. And so I had at the time Izzy, Tatum, Dania, Jolyn. I mean, I had 6. We had 9 girls on that team, and 5 of them wrestled varsity. So I was all for it. I just set rules, and actually I took the rules from Emma Randall. And I don't know if you guys know Emma or not, but fantastic coach. She's at Columbia University right now. But no shirts off, and I don't want to see butt cheeks was the rules. That's it. Otherwise we're scrapping and stuff. But I do we are separate now because we do have teams in for practicing. I'm in a huge co-op. I have 5 schools that come there. And, so I have 30-ish wrestlers, and our boys wrestling room is exactly 1 mat with 2 extra square or 2 extra circles in a corner. We couldn't fit together. We have
Right.
done joint practices, which, especially over Christmas, sometimes we do some joint practices just because maybe there's half the people are gone on vacation or things like that. But no, I
No,
had to
that's
separate out because,
hugely, yeah, that's hugely different though. Numbers,
yeah,
now you're running into safety issues anyway in a room.
yeah,
yeah,
Nobody has, 3 mats long, especially in these
yeah,
smaller schools. But I was
yeah.
more just referring to,
Oh,
you know, the schools where, you might have a half a dozen girls. Just include them. They want to feel
mhm.
yeah,
included anyway. Let them compete with the boys. Let them practice with the boys. It's just going to make them better.
Yeah,
yeah,
you're 100% correct on that. And I'm sure there is a huge difference going from where your son's wrestling at Wilton to Bettendorf's room. I mean, the number of kids in those programs are huge. And
yep,
Bettendorf's a big girls wrestling program. I
yep,
mean, and they've done, and then unions, kind of building it, right? So
yeah.
that's everybody's in
Well,
a
and
different spot
and
right now.
and no different. Wilton boys and JV and varsity together. There's 40 boys out. Like so.
Wow.
But it comes down to it's kind of like who's going to give you the go you need to go. And
Hmm.
at the level that our daughters wrestled at, you always know who you are getting ready for. You're doing your regular routine, but you know who you're getting ready for. And my daughter may have had a move in her arsenal that a very high level wrestler at her weight in the Wilton boys room or in the Bettendorf boys room needed to perfect. And she went in and she was his practice partner because she was doing what his competitor was going to do. And she knew
Uh-huh.
how to do it better than anybody else, in that Bettendorf entire system. And so for the schools that have enforced, virtual no physical contact, those are the things that I hope that those programs can move past. And that kind of leads into the same thing for working into a club situation that the club coaches can have the respect and the school coaches can have the mutual respect that when a wrestler needs something, we're going to do what's best for the wrestler. And we're going to get the wrestler the mental prep and the physical prep and the nutritional prep they need. And we're going to work together at that and not only contradict each other, but make it impossible to work together. And kind of goes boys and girls and administration programs as well as club coaches all factoring into that too.
Well, since you brought it up, I had it farther down the list of my outline here, but why don't we talk about clubs and how they've affected? Like I said, in Northwest Iowa, typically if we have any club, BV's kind of been the one. Northwestern college has done a little bit too, but there's not a lot of clubs on our side of the state, so it doesn't affect me much. Um, what's the club? Where did your girls go? And how has that helped the wrestling? And then how have they um, worked with the college or the high school programs? Josh, why don't you go ahead and start?
Well, Jillian has wrestled from Immortals from day one. Um, once she decided she wanted to go, I had reached out to Cruz, and like I said, when she first started there, there was no girls, and they it was Cruz and Joey Laser, and I don't even remember Hodges, and they were all just so welcoming and inviting. Um, they made her feel like a wrestler, not a girl. And that made it very easy for her to want to be there. So I'm eternally grateful to them for that because some clubs, even at that time, and we're later compared to some of the girls that came before Jillian, where, we really don't want girls here.
Yeah.
There was always a little bit of that. And we never once got that vibe. So we were very lucky there. I think doesn't matter what club we would have ended up with. I think um, there are so many good clubs out there right now. You just have to find the one where you feel comfortable, where you want to be there, and you're going to improve. Doesn't matter which club. Everybody is like, my club's the best club, and I would say that too. But that's any club you go to where you're comfortable, you're having a good time, you have good coaches investing in you, you're going to improve. You're going to improve. It's hard not to improve in those environments. And we're very blessed in the state of Iowa to have so many options across the state. I wish you guys had more out in Western.
Yeah, I
Um,
think they're coming, but we just don't. They're slow coming.
and it's nice too because you start building that camaraderie with some of these other athletes from the other schools. So you start going to wrestling meets, and you'll see girls, and especially early when there wasn't huge numbers on some of these teams. Girls warming up together from other schools and things like that. So you're building friendships. You're all working together. You're finding like-minded people. It's it's I don't think it's necessary, but I think you need to find a supplement somewhere, especially this day and age, whether it is 1 day a week, 4 days a week, whatever fits your schedule. Um, we were very lucky with our school too. Bart is like one of the most open-minded coaches. He didn't give a shit what you were doing, where you're going. If you were wrestling, he really didn't care. As long as you're improving in wrestling, he didn't care. If you want to go to
Hmm.
big game, go to big game. You want to go to Immortals. He was never, you have to go here. This is where our team goes. None of that stuff. And they just, he knew it was a supplement. Bart was a wrestler. He's got kids that wrestles. He knows. Um, we've been very blessed like that.
Yeah, and I can say as a high school coach, I welcome club coaches because I cannot possibly in that hour and a half to 2 hours of practice get to all 25, 30 of the kids, find that one little thing that they're missing so that any of those extra little things are just awesome to have. And I just, I hear different things from different coaches around the state. I'm pretty well networked in this state with most of the girls coaches, and I just hear about different things that happen in different clubs and stuff. Sometimes there's a little overlap, and they don't always get along. Sometimes I hear those things. But what was Hannah's experience club in high school?
So she, like I said, she started at the Wilton Wrestling Club, which is not affiliated with the school, but just held, kind of through the
Yep.
school. And uh, had started there. And there's another association in our town of Wilton, and called PAC 732. And she got some extra even from club time just in junior high to there because the junior high season is appropriately short, I will say.
Yeah. Yeah.
But doing AAU and all of that, she did spend some time at both practices. And once she got into high school, that's when Samantha Siebel was part of the community. She wasn't in her junior high years. And she actually took her up to TJ's up in Jefferson and started there as she was starting to develop her girls only club here in Muscatine. So she has kind of evolved through it, and worked through her own growth and her own maturity. Um, she was welcome back at PAC any day. You know, the youth club for Wilton was eighth grade and under. But
Yeah.
she was back at, welcome back at PAC anytime, just to get in the reps she needed, get with the partner she needed. If she needed to go help somebody, kind of like I mentioned before, because she would do something better than the other guy in the room, she was always very welcome there. Um, Ironically, my son goes to Big Game, which is TJ's brother-in-law. So like I'm a house divided.
Uh-huh.
But it's funny because although there's, house divided and, you know, family battle, in between those two families, friendly fire, obviously. Um,
Yeah.
you know, Samantha is one of my son's biggest fans, although it's brother's club, brother-in-law's club. And if something's not going right, she's gonna show both those guys and say, why is he getting this wrong? And that's a boy wrestler, but um, so why there's always friendly fire. I think everybody ultimately should always be about the kids
Yeah.
and should always be for the betterment of the kids. And every now and then as adults, we do lose sight of that. All of us individually, tend to get streamlined. But yeah, she kind of had a growth and evolution just as more things became available. One thing I think I want to add to, club aside, a lot of these clubs will host clinics. So you may not be, or your family may not be in a position to do a weekly club all summer. Um, but it's a little bit back to that seasonality side of things. Don't be afraid to hit a clinic that's hosted by a
Hmm.
club, hosted by a particular clinician. Um, it's kind of like I just left a livestock event, so I'm a little bit like, we call it barn blind. When you're only seeing one thing, you're only seeing one thing, and you could be downgrading that thing, going, "This cow is not good." Like, and it could be excelling, but you've seen it every day the same way every day, and you're only seeing what's right in front of you. And a different perspective can change everything. And that's one thing I hope parents and club coaches don't lose sight of, and school coaches, right? We should all keep
Yeah.
learning and we should all keep expanding and growing. And that was one advantage Hannah had as the programs down here kind of evolved into, growth and maturity and ages and girls only and some of that. Um, she had lots of different perspectives, and she was able to learn from different perspectives and still hone her own style and her own skill set. But she was, like Josh, we never had a moment of, we don't take girls here.
Hmm.
Um, the advantage now with the growth across the state and across state lines, because geography wise, we're not that far from Illinois, and there's parts that aren't that far from Missouri. Um, the girls that don't have a comfort level, don't have brothers, didn't grow up watching this with dad or whatever, they do have a girl only opportunity. And I'd never judge a family or a kid who only wants the girl opportunity. And, whether it's safety, security, or injury prevention, whatever it may be, that's an advantage the girls are going to have, the kids are going to have coming up, of girl only. And that's, the club Hannah has graduated out of, as she's now, just reffing and not competing. Um, but there's a little bit of a sisterhood, that came along with that as
Hmm.
well. And that's very healthy for girls as well. But also boys don't have cooties. Don't be afraid of boys.
Yeah, I started last year. I do about a month and a half of all girls club just because we're still growing in our area. I was fortunate, when I first started coaching girls, I kind of started around that group of girls that graduated last year, not last, yeah, 2 years ago and stuff. So, we had some really good girls, but sometimes that was a bad part of growth because people were scared to come into that room because they were already worried about getting beat by these. So I started
Yeah,
the,
by that sector
yeah,
of girls that had grown.
yeah. So
Yep.
I started an all girls which it went very well last year. I had about 20 girls, but a lot of them would not have gone into the boys' room. And maybe now they will. I'm actually going to cut back a little bit this year because it did affect kind of it was tough to do club and be the high school coach too at the same time. But I think we're going to do
Oh
a
yeah.
smaller portion of the season and try to get them into the boys clubs. We have such a strange school district. It's two school districts that came together. I think they're on 14 years ago, but they still don't. They have the same name, same thing, but don't share two school boards, two separate wrestling clubs. It's, I don't actually live in that either school district, so I don't understand and don't care. It's not
Yeah.
not my deal. Not my deal. Um, let's run into weight cut. Obviously, that's one of the things that new parents hear wrestling, they hear instantly weight cutting. People from my age group, we did things really stupid. There wasn't a lot of days I didn't have a plastic suit on and, starving and dehydrated. Things are different now. But what's your stance and how did your daughters go on the weight cut? Josh, go ahead and start because I know Jillian's, kind of goes all over the place sometimes with her weight and she's learning, I think, how to maintain now and things. So
Yeah, so as far as weight in my house, that was between her and her coaches. And then it was always, we always had a conversation ahead of time, whether it be a big tournament, like, if it's Fargo or if it's just state or whatever. And the question's always the same. All right, what's your weight? And then we come up with a plan from there. And I do try to hold her accountable. She's still a child. She needs to learn when you're going to commit to something, people are expecting you to, especially during high school. And with there being weight classes, coaches, when you tell a coach, I'm going to be this weight, there's that expectation there. So I'm going to hold her accountable there. But everything that she ever did, as far as weight cutting related, would have been through her coach. She's messaging Cruz, talking with him. What does she need to do? How much water is she drinking? I never wanted, there'd be times Jillian would try to do it the wrong way. And it's like, no, you need to eat dinner. What are you doing? Knock it off. Just, we have to be choosy of what we're having, but I need you to eat, 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 eat. So luckily she likes chicken. So she eats all kinds of chicken. But I think as far as weight cutting goes, I don't think there's a real place for it until you get high school level. I think anything youth related, knock that off. She rolled in so many tournaments fat and happy. I used to take 100 tournaments like preseason nationals. And there was one time I remember I gave him an oatmeal cream pie. I said, go stand in the weigh-in lines with this. And he's like, really? And he started laughing. He was rolling in fat and happy. And he'd see kids in there crying and sad. And he'd be standing there smiling with his little Debbie cake, nibbling on it. You know, it's like if anything else, it'll drive somebody crazy and you'll feel good.
yeah.
So I think as far as youth goes, I don't think there's really a place for it. I think once you get into high school and you're taking it a little more seriously, if you're guided properly, there's ways to do it, and do it right and healthy. And it's not a bad thing unless you're a third grader and you're getting ready for AAU state. You think you got to go down 10, 12, 15 pounds.
Yeah, that'd
No.
be
Yeah.
no, wouldn't recommend that. I know I stick to about one our preseason weigh-in or the certification weigh. I usually one more weight class down from where you're at is about all we ever do. Just because as a coach, I don't want to have to worry about it. Honestly,
Yeah.
I want to make sure everybody's making weight. I don't really care otherwise. But how did Hannah handle weight cuts and stuff? I mean, she's about the same,
Yep.
stayed in that 120, 125, pretty much all high school, didn't she?
Yeah, her freshman year she was 110 and then 120, 125, is where she wrestled all the way through. There's a the thing I want parents to understand is one, it's not like, I mean, I'm only 29, so just ask my son how old I am. I'm only 29. It's not like when we were in high school where a guy would do a 30-pound cut in a week, wrestle one weight on a Monday and wrestle one weight on a Thursday. That is no longer allowed or physically possible. So end
Yeah.
of story there. Um, but there's a difference between calorie and water management and weight cutting. And truthfully, outside of preseason, there is no cut like there was when we were in high school, like the old school wrestling situation was. You get to manage your weight strategically up to your preseason weigh in, and that dictates where you can be. And it is a strategic process. You cannot flip a switch and have a 4.0 on your GPA overnight. You cannot flip a switch and change your weight 2 weight classes overnight. And if I could, I would be 120 pounds. So it doesn't work that way, and there's no reason for it to happen that way, or to expect it to be that. Just like Josh said, with youth, eat the freaking oatmeal cream pie and bring me one. Like there is no purpose. Weigh in, wrestle your shoe size, and run with it. This is not a big deal because there are no college coaches watching Super Pee Wee State. Let the kid go to the bathroom when they need to go to the bathroom, right? Just do it.
Yeah.
Our process of weight management throughout having I'm going to have a 220-pound senior boy, but I had a 175-pound freshman boy and a 175-pound boy and a 125-pound girl. Our theory throughout probably about 3 to 4 weeks before season through season is if you can't wash it or kill it, don't eat it. And when I maintain that as I'm helping them meal prep and then I'm preparing the evening meal, that was our number one rule, and it helped a ton. Between that and water intake management and them starting to calculate and manage how much and just pay attention to how much they're taking in, huge differences top to bottom throughout the years we wrestled. Helping parents understand it's calorie and water management, it's not weight cutting. That's the big deal.
Yeah.
And then they get to pay attention a little bit too. I mean, I am healthier during wrestling season than I am in the summer, I promise, because I'm eating like they eat, you know. But understanding, I mean, the Google machine's amazing for starting to understand how do you maintain, how do you fuel, and understanding small portions, little snacks all day keeps the metabolism going. You know, all of those things are at our fingertips as parents. And so helping the kids and teaching the kids that and supporting the kids through that. Um, like Josh said, holding them accountable and making sure they are fueling their body. You have to fuel your body to push the brain blood to your brain to be a student, to be successful. And then you get to go wrestle. You have to fuel your system to be successful at what you're doing. And just not eating isn't an option. And it's tough because they're counting those, ounces on the scale. But the main thing is for parents and new parents to this situation is it's management, it's not a cut. And that's the most important part.
Yeah. And
one of the things that I've talked to Jillian about in the past too, and I've talked to other girls when weight comes up. And my question's always the same, it's like, Josh, I'm thinking about going to this weight, or Dad, I'm thinking about going to that weight. And at the end of the day, my question is always the same. And I just look right at them and I say, what weight do you think you can win? Are you trying to place, or are you trying to stand on the top of the podium? What weight is that? Is that a weight up? Is that a weight down? Is that the weight you're at? Where do you feel most confident? And then go.
Yeah.
Some people just automatically think they have to lose weight. You don't have to. I watched a kid when Hunter was in high school. He jumped up 2 weights and ended up getting third at high school state. Because he had a tough district that year. He didn't know if he was going to get through. And he thought, well, I'm just going to wrestle fat and happy. He goes up 2 weight classes, ends up getting third. So where do you feel you're going to win? And then plan accordingly. Like Emily said it way better than I did. Like, it's not a weight cut. It's managing your water intake. It's managing what you're putting into your body. You're not depriving yourself. That's a cut.
Yeah. No, and I like if you can't clean it or kill it, don't eat it. I like that.
Yep.
That's a really good advice.
I stole that from Samantha Siebold.
No,
but yeah,
it's okay.
It is. If you can't wash it or kill it, don't eat it.
That's really good advice. It's all the crap, that we, and my girlish figure, it's, I know it's bikini season, but I didn't get in one this year. So, I don't take my own advice most of the time, but I do bring in once a year, we have a nutrition person come in. I've had her on the podcast, and then actually I just talked to Joey Boyens, who does Grandviews. Him and his wife do Grandview stuff. He's going to come on and talk about nutrition and things like that too. So yeah, it's different. We when I wrestled and Josh wrestled, we weighed in the morning and wrestled at 5, 6 o'clock at night. Mountain Dew and a Snicker bar was all right for breakfast then. You
Yep.
can't do
Yeah.
that and wrestle an hour later. That doesn't work.
No, and the difference I've got is Duder's fueling now. He's on a 4,500 calorie diet, and I'm like, I can't get you 36 eggs a day, which is the 250 grams of protein he's supposed to eat. It's like we've totally flipped a switch to where he's headed. And so it's a totally different mentality. But he has learned enough and taught himself enough about the calorie management and nutritional management that he is tracking it. And there are apps and all sorts of crap we didn't have when I was 29 in high school.
Yeah.
So it can be done so responsibly. And us as parents, I mean, I've learned a ton about it through them and because of them. And I'm way healthier now, even as Hannah's done wrestling, than I was when we started the process, just because I've learned about the calorie management and water intake as well.
Gotcha. So both your daughters, well, Jillian's on her way to Grandview next year, and Hannah went to Simpson. Found out that maybe college wrestling wasn't for her, which is great. I think I said this, I don't know if it was before we started, but I had always pushed girls kind of into it because wow, there's scholarships available. There's 22 schools in Iowa that would love to have you, even if you weren't that great. And then I've found throughout some of that man, I think I was doing the wrong thing. I think maybe here's some options for you, but you got to do what's best for you. Um, we'll start with Hannah because her story is a little bit different. And then we'll see where Jillian's, what went in the recruiting process. Maybe even talk about the recruiting process for both of you, and just so parents are understanding what that is all about.
Um, so Hannah, when she was 9, she was going to be a veterinarian, be a college softball player, and be a part-time dance teacher when she was 9.
Yep.
Now we're going to be a nurse and we're a wrestling referee. Like who knows where they went, where they're going, and where they're going to take us all. Um, she really did love the college softball idea. She loved the game of softball. She was very good at softball. Um, our family made a different decision regarding softball, specifically in Iowa, because it's in the summer, and our involvement with livestock projects and our Angus cattle operation. She could not dedicate the time to the livestock projects and softball and advance her freestyle wrestling like she wanted. It was impossible to do it all. And so she made the decision to stop playing softball. The freestyle wrestling got better and the livestock projects went further. So you got to make choices. You can't do it all. She never really found a true comfort level with freestyle wrestling. And she still loves to push her body, still loves to push her mind, still loves to push physically. But the college wrestling scene being freestyle and her really truly diving into wanting to get into the professional world and get into working and get through school to start having more independence. The school she chose, the school that chose her for wrestling and the comfort level she had with a wrestling program, uh, they did not have a nursing program. So she was going to spend 4 years at college to possibly wrestle and then have to work towards her nursing piece. And she made a very emotional decision, but the decision that her love of competing on the wrestling mat was not as deep as her passion to become a nurse and to pursue her referee. And so she chose to not participate or not push any further in the college wrestling. Um, I hate the phrase where it says wrestling really is for everybody because it's not. Let's be freaking honest. This sport is not for everybody. Um, and being a college athlete is not for everybody. I did it 2 seasons. I've had my fill. Um, I had a lot of fun my third year of college playing slow pitch beer league softball. I got to go, whoa. A couple things that happened for me personally. I picked a college I wanted to go to college at. They let me play softball there. I learned a lot. I also learned that was not my style of softball. Um, Hannah kind of ended up mimicking that path. She picked a college that she wanted to go to. They wanted her to wrestle. It was good. Freestyle wrestling was not her style of wrestling, and it was not her love and passion. And she made the decision to step away. And it was a very emotional decision, but it was a very healthy decision for her. Her recruiting process was not anything like the girls are experiencing now. That is going to continue to grow and evolve, just like it, high school wrestling has in Iowa with the sanctioning, and programs are growing and changing. Um, she had half a dozen programs reach out to her. Some of those schools were not options for a lot of reasons. Um, she went on 3 tours and she found the school she was comfortable with, the coaching staff she was comfortable with, and the progress she wanted to make as she pursued her adult career. That was where she had a comfort level. Um, she was, like I said, Simpson didn't have a nursing program, but they had a health and exercise science program, and so she was going to build on those two things together. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that that just shifted and changed. So she made a little bit of an adjustment and has moved on from that, but has expounded and grown with with the refereeing side of things, and is truly loving that. She's working at the university as a patient care tech now, and is really found her calling there. So it was bittersweet to see her hang up the singlet type, type moment, but she didn't move to Guam and take up underwater basket weaving, so we're fine.
Yeah.
We're good. We're on a good, healthy path. She doesn't have any regrets. I've asked her, and as her brother's going through his own recruiting process, I asked, "Do you have any regrets?" And she's just like, "No, because I tried it. I gave it a fair shake. Nobody did anything wrong. There wasn't a problem with anybody or anything. I just matured through and did not need to have my hand raised anymore. She still works out. She still pushes her body. She's still doing those things, doing a little bit of, coaching, clinicking, things like that. Still loves that, but just decided the need to get the hand raised wasn't there and has matured through."
Yeah. And Josh, I remember Jillian a few years back wrote a very nice letter to the University of Northern Iowa about girls wrestling and women's wrestling. Still don't have a program there, but how has her recruiting process gone?
Um, it was fun. She's actually sitting right here.
Is she? Hey, Jill, how's it going?
It was fun. It was always nice when I'd come home from work and all of a sudden she'd come running from downstairs. Dad, another coach called me or another coach texted me, and then it was always, I don't know what to say. And so we kind of worked through it together, and it's like, well, I can't respond, but how do you feel? What are your thoughts? Do you like this school? Could you imagine yourself living in another state far away? All questions you have to ask yourself. And so that part was definitely cool. We took a few trips and we looked at a few different things. At the end of the day, Jillian doesn't know what she wants to do, but she does know she wants to wrestle.
Okay. I was there. Believe me, I
And
was
she
there.
wants to compete. And so I don't know that she has a path career-wise that she's chosen just yet, which is fine. I told her she's got a year to kind of figure stuff out anyway or two, because you got all those gen eds you got to knock out anyway. But
Yeah.
hopefully, something comes along. I do know that trip to Florida really helped inspire her coaching wise. She really enjoyed that. I could see her possibly doing that one day. So I've encouraged her maybe to look into teaching, exercise science, different things like that, where she can still be around the sport if that's something she does love. Um, yeah, just the recruiting process has actually been really fun. I don't know. I really don't have too much to say on it. I'm glad she finally decided on where she wanted to go. It took her a little bit. There was definitely a lot of thought that went into it. She talked to a lot of different coaches, trying to figure out what she wants to do. And She didn't know. Yeah, there was time a spot where she wasn't even sure she wanted to go wrestle for a college. She was looking the RTC route, and we were talking about that potentially. And um, she talked about, just maybe even taking a gap year and wrestling unattached and just hitting some of the opens this next year. So it took her a little bit, and then she finally settled in. Grandview, I think at the end of the day was an easy choice for her because, you had put on some practices years ago. She's familiar with those rooms. We pop in there. We met Baez years ago and she's done some camps there. And I just think that was the more natural fit for her with as far as some of the girls that are there and things like that. I think there was just a comfort level that kind of swayed her that way. Um, Nothing specific. Like it wasn't like she had a lot of really great opportunities, and I don't. Again, just blessed and thankful for the opportunity she's given, and hopefully she makes the best of it. We'll see. She's excited.
Yeah, no, Grandview is great. I've known those coaches since the day they walked in the door. Actually, I was there. Keegan, with the first girl I coached, was the first recruit at Grandview. Pushed her into it with all kinds of injuries and things like that. But that was before Kinsey was even hired, and that
Mm.
was when Mitchell was there. So anytime I could be around Nick Mitchell and hear him talk, man, I was ready to go wrestle for Nick Mitchell, and I had probably 20 years on him. So. No, I think that's a great opportunity to go there. Um, I know sometimes wrestling, you've both said it, wrestling is a tough sport, really hard. Um, there's a lot of losses. Well, not neither one have a lot of losses to deal with, but we learn mostly from the losses and things. Is there some advice? I've seen some parents, and not either one of you, but I've seen parents that don't handle a child's loss very well, and they don't know that that's what we actually grow from and stuff. Is there some things that you did with your kids to help them figure out that that's actually how you learn and grow in this sport? Either
Let
one of
them
you,
cry.
let them cry.
Let them cry. I was I was the Wilton Wrestling Club VP for a while, and uh, you'd watch, the new parents would come in and they'd have a 4-year-old who can't tie their own wrestling shoes and they're mad because they're crying on the mat. Let them cry. And that translates to college, high school, all of that. Don't let them throw a temper tantrum. There's no throwing of headgear. That is not allowed. But you have to let them get it. And it is not your loss. Living vicariously through your children, it is not your loss. You can be heartbroken for them, but you cannot be mad because they lost. Because no college scholarships are handed out in elementary school.
Yeah.
It's fine. And how can it, like Josh started off, how can we get better from this? What went wrong? Okay, let's not make that mistake again. Um, but we've just asked them to go out and do something physically combative, head to head with 300 people watching, and it didn't go their way. And they were giving everything they had and getting choked out in the process and scared to death they were going to die. This happens at the high school level. Let them cry. Let them release that emotion and don't take their loss personally because it wasn't your loss.
Good advice.
I might, be guilty of not always handling things the best a time or two.
That's
But
why
yeah,
they have Crown, right?
that's why.
Uh, Mr. Worthen, how about you? And then I have one fun question for you, and then we'll call it a night.
I think it starts back in youth wrestling. Yeah, that's where you start learning how to lose. Um, we were talking about those kids that come out and they're just winning, winning, winning. Just to kind of circle back around to that, I guess if your kid's winning, 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 first and foremost, you better be taking them somewhere else because you don't want them winning, winning, winning. Everybody needs to learn how to lose. One of the things I've always told my kids, how you walk on the mat is how you walk off. I'm all for the crying, being upset, but you're not going to do it on the mat. You go find a stairwell, you go find a back room. I don't care where it is. You walk off the same way you walk on. I don't care how devastating it is. And I know that's hard sometimes. Jillian suffered that her junior year. She had a not real great state tournament that year and did not finish the way she wanted to. And there was a lot of people cheering against her. And I had prepared her because I knew she was, up there. I knew her head was up there and I had to have her ready. I knew it was going to be a tough tournament that year. And I just kept telling her, how you walk on is how you walk off. I don't care who you're wrestling. And so after she lost to Destiny, out of everything that she's ever done, I was most proud after that match of my daughter than any other win she's ever had while she wrestled. She stood up, she shook Destiny's hand, patted her on the back, walked off just like she walked on, found a room and cried, came up to me, and I put my arms around her, and all I said is, I'm sorry. That's it. That's all you can do. Just hug them, apologize. Sometimes you don't even have to say anything. Um, they're already beating themselves up after that loss. They don't need somebody else to come down on them. They need a hug. They need ice cream. They need to go out for pizza and just let them feel bad. And then once they're ready, then you can have that conversation of, what do we need to do? Why did it happen that way? Is there something you could have done different? Another thing I used to always tell my kids after they lost, and even when Hunter used to take losses really bad, and I'm like, you got it. You're looking at it all wrong. That person went out of their way today to show you where you need work. You need to look at that and acknowledge that. That's where you need to work. And as long as you fix that, I don't see that happening again. Jillian was the same way. And so we go work on that. I know one time you asked Jillian, how is she so well at making adjustments? Because we're always making adjustments. We're always talking about what could we have done different in the moment. Oh, this happened. Next time I'm going to do this. So we're always looking, how do we make that adjustment so that we don't feel like that again?
Yeah, well, that's really good. Because I remember I've been on trips with Jillian where I think it was the Junior Olympics when we went out to North Carolina. Russell's a really good wrestler. The first day in the duels and got beat. I don't remember what the score was even, and that coach was pretty impressed and gave us a he was very impressed with his wrestler. I'll just put it that way. And the next day, Jillian went out and teched her in probably about 35, 40 seconds. She made the adjustment. She found a different way and stuff. She wasn't upset about the loss, but she did figure out how to beat her by one day later. So, yeah. And in that match against Destiny, those are hard things for me because I know Jillian, I've coached Jillian, I'm friends with her, but I have my athlete out there too. So sometimes those matches are difficult for me, but I knew walking over there because I think I was on Tatum's mat and I went, oh, no, it wasn't even Tatum. I don't remember exactly what it was. I went over mid match, kind of surprised at the score, but I knew that third period was going to be, there was adjustments being made. And I think that match ended up being 11-10 after like a big deficit to start. So I
Yeah.
knew, from watching Jillian and things like that. So, yeah, it was obviously a fun match for me to win because that was a big thing for Destiny, but it was also, still knew that Jillian was right there, and 1 second different would have been 1 second different, maybe two
Right.
seconds difference. I remember the match should have ended differently. So, no, but I've always enjoyed Jillian. And I've always, and Hannah, this last 2 years at AAU State, I'm gonna give you your last question here, but I wanted to make sure you guys both knew this because your daughters are fantastic people. Last 2 years at AAU State, I've had the opportunity to sit down with Hannah because I get to walk around in the middle, and she is learning. Man, she's a good official, and she does such a fantastic job of controlling the mat at her age, and I can't give her much advice, but I did talk to her after a match that a coach kind of got on her, and I did talk to her this year about, man, she made the right call because in her mind it was a safety issue, and I hope that helped her, and I think she's talked to me about that afterwards too. But man, she's done such a fantastic job there. And I talked to Mark, Twin Rivers, she coached this year, but he said if she would have gone the officiating route, she would have been one of the top officials coming out of there. So that only officiating a couple of years, and him saying that it's pretty impressive. So I want you to know both your
I
daughters
will.
are just fantastic people. I've really enjoyed the reaction or interactions I've had with them. So you guys done a great job. So I'm going to give you your last question, and this is always a fun one. So you got promoted. You are now the head of the NFHS rules making committee for high school wrestling, high school girls wrestling. What change are we making? Go ahead and start, Josh.
What change are we making? Hmm. No, that's your change. Get out of here, girl. Jillian says freestyle. She wants it freestyle. That, clearly, that's not an option. If it was, that'd be great. But that's not an option, and that's fine with me. So if we're still doing folk style, I'm a fan of the 2 point takedown. But in conjunction, what I would like, I want the aggressive wrestler to be rewarded, and I want the push out. So
I love the
I want to
push
go
out.
back to 2, and I want the push out because then you
Yeah.
get your extra point that way.
Yeah. I've heard people say, well, we should give a 3 point reversal too. And I'm like, well, that defeated. I mean, why don't we just go back to the 2 point takedown? I still yell two. I sometimes feel like an idiot, like two or
Yeah.
three, whatever else.
I'm too old school. I like 2. It just sounds so much better.
It
It just sounds
does.
so much better.
Yeah.
But I figure, look at it this way. You make up the extra point by being aggressive and pushing girls out anyway. So you don't
Yep.
need a 3 point takedown necessarily.
Yeah.
So
And
I
would
don't
keep
know.
us from that push out would also keep us from wrestling the edge.
Oh, we
You
love
know,
edge wrestling at our house. That's all we talk
well,
about.
no, I mean, but you it would keep people from stepping out of bounds,
Yeah, yeah.
and you have to learn how to wrestle in that situation. We do it every day in practice. We wrestle the edge of the mat, and then because this year the rule changed. They were really supposed to emphasize that if someone walks off the mat, there's a stall call automatic, whether they're just pushing out or not. But I'm going to tell you, officials do not like to call that stall call. And about mid-season, that I end up getting 2 warnings for not. I didn't care that it was I could call one of them. I don't care. Make the call.
Yeah.
So, but all right, Ellie, what's the rule change? What are you changing about girls wrestling?
So I would be a fan of the push out point as well. Um, I would honestly thinking through like how this translates to freestyle, I'd be a fan of neutral starts as well. Um, referee's position is fine. I get it. But the push out point and the neutral start um would would do some things, would help some coaches progress differently into the freestyle process, and working on bottom is something you have to do, but starting on bottom is different than working on the bottom. So
Yep.
I mean, that's a personal preference, but the number one change that needs to happen is there is no light color below the waist on girls singlets. Please, ever. Let's talk about
Yes.
oh my Jesus, Lord in heaven. For the love of
Yes.
power, quit putting light colors on girls' butts, please. Thank you.
Well, I'm not even a fan for the boys having white singlets. I absolutely hate, I hate the white singlet
There's
myself.
there's some pieces of project, but I will. That's one thing I guess junior high on up parents need to understand. You're gonna have a bloody singlet situation. There are girls. There's no getting around it. You are men. I am the girl in the room saying you're gonna have it. Be prepared for it. It's embarrassing. Be proactive about it. And parents and coaches need to have the conversation with the families and the girls prior to the season starting on how they're going to prepare for these things. And I've seen some referees so amazingly tactfully handle situations. No parent or coach has ever argued with what referees allowed to happen and be done and everything
Yep.
else. And it's awful, but the more we can prevent it by not putting white, yellow, pink, light powder blue on the bottom of girls' singlets, it would be better off. Furthermore, just include a pair of spandex with the damn uniform. Just have them put an extra layer on. It's not
Yeah.
going to hurt anybody.
The singlets, the Nike singlets actually have a built-in underwear and bra. I
Extra
wish
brief,
I could
yeah,
afford. I wish our school could afford those because that's what I would buy.
the extra ones.
Not for weigh-ins
We took
though.
off the hair bonnets. Let's add underbriefs and make it
Yeah.
extra layers.
Yes. Um, Either of you have any final thoughts for the day before we move on? Any great words of wisdom for all those new parents out there or anybody?
One thing with my kids when they were little, especially, and they were starting out, the one thing I used to say is serious, but not too serious. Yes, you're going to be working hard. Yes, you're going to be competing, but at the end of the day, whatever happens, it's not what's defining you. Serious, but not too serious.
Like it.
And I guess you know, never forget to love to watch them play. And no, we don't play wrestling. That's not what I'm saying. But never forget to love watching them be them. Don't make it about you. Don't make it about the coach. Don't make it about the trophy. Love to watch your kids be them and make sure they know you love to watch them be them.
Yeah,
Very good
because
advice.
by the time it's all said and done, if you just love it and let them guide you and let them lead the way, they're gonna probably hit everything that you would hope they would ever hit, or they're gonna come super, super close. But you gotta let them do it.
Absolutely exceed your expectations. Like I said,
Yeah,
Hannah was going to be a veterinarian, a dance teacher, and a college softball player.
yeah.
It'll exceed my expectations.
Yeah. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up, so we'll figure it out sooner or later. But no, I've
Do I have to
enjoyed our
grow up?
convers I know there's no reason to. There's no reason to. No, I appreciate you both you guys for coming on because you get good perspective, and I knew that you would just tell it how it is, and I really do appreciate that. Great kids, you've raised good kids, so I'm really proud of everything you guys have done too, and thank you for everything you've done for the sport of wrestling because you both have contributed, and both of your daughters have contributed a lot to making Iowa girls wrestling as great as it is. So. I appreciate it. I'm going to hit the stop button on the record, and that's probably when a funner conversation will happen anyway. If I can find my mouse, there we go.